Yeah, so my typical style is, I'm going to be asking a number of questions throughout the presentation, and I like using the chat box because everybody can respond at once. I can't necessarily pay a lot of attention to all of the individual answers, but typically we find some themes through the answers pretty quickly that we'll try to point out.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Well,
so if everyone can pull up your chat boxes, hit your mute button, then we should be good to go.
okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Kyle. I'm going to do a little introduction here and then I will pass it over to you. So, everyone that's on the call, Kyle has his PhD and is a clinical psychologist that specializes in clinical health psychology and behavioral sleep medicine, including cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And he also has specialized training in mood and sleep disorders, chronic pain, weight management, and in primary care mental health integration. So, Kyle has been awesome with helping our team on so many of these topics. I know you helped us out a few months ago regarding sleep and how important that is. And today, you're going to help everyone figure out how we can have a strong mindset moving into 2020. So, I'm personally really excited for this because I feel like it's a new year, new mentality, and think any little tip I can get personally helps a ton. So, Kyle, I'll let you go ahead and take it away.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Mackenzie. So just some other notes is I work over at the Lifestyle Medicine Clinic at St. Luke's and do a lot more intensive work in this area over here. So what I'm presenting to you today in about 30 minutes is also what I do in like a 4 week, 1 hour series over here. So I'm trying to teach you all or get a flavor of what we do in about 30 minutes and what I take 4 hours to do in our mindset classes over at the Lifestyle Medicine Clinic. So it's a little ambitious, but hopefully you'll get some different ideas about things that could help you out. So, all right, well, let's jump into this. So, we're going to talk a little bit about what mindset is, particularly from the viewpoint of the author Carol Dweck, who's a psychologist. And then we'll talk a little bit about how mindset affects health behavior change. And then we'll start talking about different strategies you can use to help modify your mindset, and particularly thought processes in the future, which in turn can help you make healthier choices and hopefully feel better overall. So we think of mindset as a person's attitude or set of opinions about something. And more specifically, you can think about mindset from the perspective of having a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And this comes from Carol Dweck's book called Mindset. And really quickly, what a fixed versus growth mindset means. Somebody with a fixed mindset kind of believes that you're born the way you are, you've been dealt the cards that you've been dealt, and there's not much that you're going to be able to do to change that. Whereas somebody with a growth mindset believes that they can change parts about themselves, how they're behaving, how they're thinking, through deliberate effort over time. And you can think about fixed versus growth mindset. Take something like a musical instrument. People will say, well, I'm just not a musician. I can't pick up a guitar and play it. I've tried that. I'm just not any good at it. Versus somebody that is a musician. If you talk to that musician, inevitably they're going to tell you, that it didn't always come easy for them, and that they've spent lots of time practicing that instrument over time, and that's how they develop their skills. And so basically, we don't want to or people with fixed mindsets are kind of viewing their abilities as being limited, where somebody with a growth mindset believes that they can change themselves over time. So let's talk about how that applies to the health behavior change, because this certainly isn't a seminar on learning how to play guitar. So when it comes to making decisions about eating healthy and exercising, I'm curious to hear from you all. What is an example of a growth mindset that you've had? So something that you were willing to entertain, could be different in your life, that you've worked on. So let's use the chat box for this. Any examples of things that you feel like that you've been able to put work into and start changing? So I'll give you some examples, while you're typing in here. And, I'm also curious about examples of people that have a fixed mindset. So over here at Lifestyle Medicine, we're helping lots of people make these kinds of lifestyle modifications. And one of the things that we hear a lot that makes for a fun example is, people will say, well, I know y'all are promoting a whole food plant-based diet, but I'm a meat and potatoes kind of person. That's how I was born, it's how I was raised, and I think that's how I'm always going to be. And if somebody says that, I say, well, if you're unwilling to entertain that anything could be different, you're probably not going to change. Versus somebody else, or maybe even like myself, also born a meat and potatoes kind of person, that is interested in trying different kinds of food, and learning how to cook differently and eat differently. So let's hit some of the examples that are rolling in here. Oh, Jody's saying she didn't get to bed early tonight, but she'll try again tomorrow. Melissa's saying, I thought I had to do a bunch of exercising to make it worth the effort. Sorry, I'm reading this more deliberately now. Okay, so yeah, you were like, how am I ever going to have time to walk 30 minutes a day? And then you broke it into smaller pieces and you realized you could do it. Yeah, so you had a little bit of a change in perspective. Jennifer saying, I joined a gym and signed up with a trainer. Kimberly, maybe you didn't think that you could change the way you eat, and then you started doing meal prep. Oh, Lori, I really like yours. My taste buds can change so that I can appreciate new, healthier foods. Yeah, it takes a little time to get rid of all that salt and sugar. Okay, yeah. So Jennifer, yeah, your example of a fixed mindset. I'm not a get up and go to gym early kind of person. Okay, yeah, that's a good example of a fixed one. Any other examples of growth mindsets or how you've been able to start looking at things differently? One of the examples I have in my class yesterday is I'm not a gym kind of person. So yeah, pretty similar to what Jennifer is saying here. Where the alternative to that in that particular example is like, well, I can find ways to enjoy my time in the gym even if I don't like it. Okay, Jennifer's trying to limit calories. 500 calories is not much, but depends how many meals you're eating. So, all right. So then the next question for you all is, how do you think your mindset or how you feel about weight loss in general has affected your past attempts at losing weight? Oh, I love yours, Yolanda. I'm never too old to change. We can teach old dogs new tricks. Yeah, taking things one day at a time. So has anyone failed at a past attempt at losing weight? I say that a little jokingly because I think almost everyone probably has at some point in their life. Yeah, so Lori's, saying like the example of a fixed mindset, like, I'm not sure that I can change, or, that any of my attempts will ever work. And, if you don't believe that it's going to work, it's probably unlikely that it will. Oh, Melissa, yeah, you're saying like all the people in my family are this way. Is there any way that I could be different than them? Yeah, and so what many of you are saying, is that if you're viewing, weight loss as something to like obtain, like I'm just trying to lose X number of pounds and then everything is going to be okay, you can probably do that. The issue is, are you focusing on losing weight, or are you focusing on living a healthy lifestyle and figuring out how to make that sustainable? And that's a big difference, with most weight loss programs, is that it ends up not being that hard for people to lose weight a lot of times, but it's really hard to keep it off. And it comes from that difference in perspective and what you're focusing on. Are you focusing on the lifestyle, or are you focusing just on weight loss? Because I can drink shakes and lose weight, but am I going to be able to do that for the rest of my life? Most of the time we see that is not the case. And then last question for you here: how have you been able to adapt your mindset in other experiences? Or did you ever have a situation where you didn't think that you were going to be able to do something, but then you found out that you actually were? Any examples there that people have? I like that mantra, Jennifer. Trust the process and just keep going. Right. Well, I'll keep watching the chat box to see any other ideas that are coming in. But I bet if you look hard enough, that you will have examples of things that you didn't think you were going to be able to do. We go back in time, you're like, am I ever going to be able to finish high school? Am I ever going to be able to finish college? Can I actually be an effective parent? Can I be a good manager? Can I be a good coworker? And so we have these doubts, and we may not always believe in ourselves. But I'm guessing that you've had experiences where you've proved yourself wrong in the past. And we want to take that same kind of thinking process and apply it to maintaining our healthy lifestyles. And I like what Lori's saying too, and just kind of focusing on one day at a time. It's not nearly as overwhelming if you're just thinking about today rather than for the rest of your life. Okay, so let's talk about some different ways that people can go about changing their mindset. So there's all sorts of different ways of going about this, and I teach some other strategies in the mindset class here at Lifestyle Medicine. But in general, what we're going to cover here is what we would call the cognitive behavioral therapy model, and how you can start changing your relationship to your thoughts, or changing the content of your thoughts to be more helpful for you. So number one, we want to start learning to recognize when we're faced with decisions that affect our health. And if you look closely, you're going to find that there are hundreds of situations throughout the day that have some impact on your health. Like every time you park your car, every time, and you're like, how far am I going to walk into work? Every time you put something in your mouth, you're making some decision that's going to affect your health in terms of your caloric intake. So we want to start beginning to notice our thoughts in those situations that affect our health. Some other examples here would be like, what goes through your mind when you walk by a staircase and you've got a meeting upstairs? What goes through your mind when you walk by those sweets or cookies in the break room? These are all those different situations that are prime for examining our thought processes, because oftentimes our thoughts are working against us in these kinds of situations. So once we start to notice the thoughts, we can start categorizing them. Are these thoughts helpful or harmful to me? And whatever my goals for my health are, and we really try to steer away from good or bad thinking. That's not super helpful. We think of thoughts, is this helpful to what I'm trying to achieve, or is this harmful to what I'm trying to achieve? And if a thought is harmful, we may want to take a closer look at it to see how true that thought actually is. Because oftentimes these thoughts are not particularly true. And it can be really empowering to, that in and of itself, or just to recognize that your thoughts are not facts. Because if you start paying attention to your thoughts, you're going to find that a lot of them are not true at all. Especially, if you've had issues with depression or anxiety in the past, our thinking is really characterized by being distorted a lot of times when we're feeling that way. So more specifically, an example here that explains what I'm talking about would be, let's say I'm in a situation where I step on the scale in the morning and I see that my weight has gone up 1 pound. If this has ever happened to you, this situation, you step on the scale and your weight's gone up, type yes in the chat box here. That's the fastest responses I've ever heard. And that just means that you all are human, right? Okay, so the example of a thought that I would have if that happened to me, which would not be particularly helpful, is, this is pointless. I'm never going to be able to lose weight. I've been trying really hard to lose weight. Watch what I'm eating. I'm limiting my calories to 500 calories a day. I'm walking 2 times for 15 minutes a day, and my weight's going up. What gives here? And then when that happens, that doesn't make me feel, or I have this thought and I believe it, that doesn't make me feel very good. Now I'm feeling sad, I'm depressed, I'm hopeless, maybe I'm angry. And then how do you think those thoughts and feelings affect my behavior? What am I more likely to do in response to having this thought? Binge eat. Yeah, a lot of times people are saying, like, what's the point? I might as well eat whatever I want because I've been working really hard and it's not even working. Yeah, so this is a really common scenario that people run into. And so the behavioral response that I picked here is, I go to Dutch Brothers and I order a 24-ounce mocha and I get a cinnamon roll, and I'm like, well, it's not working out. I might as well treat myself. Who cares? It doesn't even work. So we can see the relationship between the situation, the thoughts that we're having, how that's affecting our feelings, and then how that affects our behaviors. Now, the question we need to ask ourselves is, if we go back to our thoughts here, this is pointless, I'll never be able to lose weight. Now, I didn't get to choose that thought. That thought just popped into my head. That's what we call an automatic thought. I didn't wake up in the morning and say, I want to have negative thoughts about my weight loss efforts. I didn't make that choice. It just happens. So what I have to do is I have to ask myself, is this true? Are my weight loss efforts pointless? Is there any possibility that I could be able to lose weight? So but before I get too ahead of myself, let's move on to our next slide here. But the main takeaway from this slide is our thoughts are not necessarily true, and they have a big impact on our feelings and behavior, which can cause us to have more negative thoughts and more negative feelings and behaviors. So we want to be mindful of when we start having these kinds of thoughts. So let's look at some examples of the types of thoughts that are really common for people to have in these situations. So people think things like, well, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm bored, and I deserve a treat to help me feel better. Or, meeting my step goal doesn't even matter if I'm not losing weight. Or my whole family is overweight, I'll never be any different. Somebody already gave us that example today, as something that a thought that they've had before. If I go over my calorie goal, it doesn't matter what I eat for the rest of the day because I already blew it. Or I should be exercising for at least 1 hour every day. Slippery slope with those should statements, and they almost always make us feel guilty. So, this is just an example of different types of thoughts that people will run into. I don't have time to go into detail about this today, but most of these kinds of thoughts fall into several categories, that are pretty predictable, and that we have the same kinds of thoughts over and over again. So, very quickly, the kinds of thoughts that these fall into are like all or nothing thinking. I went over my calorie goal, so it doesn't matter if I'm over by 100 calories or 1,000 calories. People would have that kind of thought a lot. Or they disqualify the positive, all the things that I'm doing to help don't matter, and they tend to focus more on the negative things that have happened. or they overgeneralize about their family, or these thoughts about their families, or what they're capable of doing in the future or not capable of doing in the future. So we've got names for and categories for these different types of automatic thoughts, but I wish I could cover them all, but I don't have time. So let's talk about what to do with these thoughts. So we're starting to notice these thoughts are unhelpful, and we want to counter them, or we want to come up with more helpful thoughts in these situations. And so one little trick to generate more helpful thinking is to think about how you would want to talk to yourself in the future. So you imagine yourself 5 years down the road, your weight's exactly where you want it to be, your health is exactly like you want it to be. What would you tell yourself in these different situations in the future? Or another way to think about this could be, what would you tell a friend in the same situation? We often find that we're way kinder to our friends and loved ones than we are to ourselves. So let's roll through some examples here of what this could look like. So once again, let's imagine your future self here. What do you want to tell yourself when you're around tempting foods? So you walk by the break room and there's a box of donuts in there. What do you want to tell yourself when you see that box of donuts? And if you're looking at the chat box, Jennifer's response was before this. She's not saying give up on today. Okay, so Greg's thinking about the calories, like all calories count. Lori's saying I love my body and I want to nourish it. A minute of sugary bliss isn't worth the pound gained. I can say no. I should say with healthy foods. Okay, I love my body and want to nourish it with healthy foods. I gotcha. Yeah, those are great examples. Yeah, today is not donut day, nor is any regular day, hopefully. um, okay, and then let's do another one here. What would you want to tell yourself whenever you inevitably have a mistake or misstep or have a setback? Like you do eat the donut, you slip, you're really stressed, you eat the donut, you say who cares, and then what do you want to say to yourself after that happens in the future? Because that will happen in the future. What could you say to yourself when that happens? I love that, Melissa. I can get right back on track now. I don't have to wait till tomorrow. Count the calories, stay on track, get back on track now. Yep, the way we think about relapse prevention is, the relapses are inevitable when it comes to food and exercise. And so the name of the game is just getting back on track as soon as we possibly can. Yeah, or at least it's saying like you don't have to beat yourself up for eating the donut, but let's get back to eating more nourishing food as soon as possible. Yeah, because we really don't want to be beating ourselves up about these things because we all know that that's not helpful either. Okay, let's use another example here. How would you want to talk to yourself in the future so let's say you start an exercise program and you just feel tired. You don't feel like going to the gym that day. What do you want to tell yourself in that situation in the future? Well, I love it, Jennifer. I'll feel great afterwards. I've never regretted working out. I think that's exactly like what I try to tell myself. Lisa says I'll just go and exercise for 5 minutes and then see how I feel. Oh, I love that one too. That's a tricky one. Because you tell yourself I'll do it for 5 minutes, but once you get started, we can almost always go longer once we get there. And if you feel still terrible after 5 minutes, well, you probably don't. There's probably a good reason not to continue. Great examples. So, I think like one of the interesting things about this exercise, when we sit here and brainstorm, we are pretty good at thinking of how we want to talk to ourselves in the future, or what we would say to a friend. However, in our day-to-day life, we very rarely talk to ourselves that way. And so, what we're trying to accomplish here, what the skill is learning how to talk to yourself in a more helpful way whenever you have these automatic thoughts that come up that are not helpful for you. So let's go back to our CBT model here, and I'm going to go through my cinnamon roll example with the scale again, and see how changing my thinking about this could change the whole situation. Okay, so once again, I step on the scale in the morning and I see my weight has gone up 1 pound. What would be more helpful ways of thinking about this one? So what do you all think? So we can't help but have the thought that this is pointless, I'll never be able to lose weight. How do we want to counter that thought? Or what do we want to tell ourselves in the future when and if this happens? Okay, Melissa says, I'm just going to take that as a challenge. I'm going to try harder today. I'm going to get back on track. Lori reminds herself that her weight's going to fluctuate. There are lots of factors that influence our weight that are not, necessarily related to body fat, which is what probably most of us are caring about actually losing. Yeah, and Jennifer's saying weight fluctuations are normal. If you've tracked your weight regularly, you're going to see it goes up and down all the time. If you draw a line through it, hopefully it's generally moving in a downward direction, but there's a lot of variation from day to day. Yeah, at least one day doesn't determine my health plan. Yeah, and Jody's saying I'll focus more on some of the other positives that are coming from my lifestyle changes, rather than the fact that my weight has been up. So these are all excellent ideas here. So in my example, what I said was, you know what, losing weight is difficult and takes longer than I want it to. Anyone else agree with that statement? Yeah, that's another one of those flurry of yeses. Yeah, so that's something that we can all agree upon. So I had this thought: losing weight is difficult. Or actually, I first have the thought that this is pointless. I'll never be able to lose weight. And I say, hold up, Kyle. Is that the most helpful way to think about this? And I say, you know what? It's not. I'm gonna what's something that I can believe that's true, that's more helpful in this situation? And I say, losing weight's difficult and takes longer than I want it to. All right, well, that changes my feelings about it. Now I have a neutral mood, and then I continue with my plan for the rest of the day. And sorry if you have to hop off right now. I promise I'm wrapping up soon and we can send out these slides. Okay, so I eat my normal breakfast and I continue on with the plan. Oh. All right, so in summary here, identifying our unhelpful thoughts and replacing them with more realistic thoughts can be a super helpful strategy, for really anyone trying to change a behavior. Whenever we teach this, our goal is really to help people develop a growth mindset and realize, that with effort, they're going to be able to make changes in themselves that maybe they didn't believe they could make before. And some other interesting things to think about, is we really want people to believe that they're healthy people. Deep down inside, we want them to think that I'm a healthy person. Because if they believe that they're a healthy person, they're way more likely to have thoughts that are consistent with the way a healthy person thinks, and they're more likely to make decisions that a healthy person would make. But it takes work, to start changing the way you think about yourself in relationship to health. So, and to leave you with one question to ponder, is what would it take for you to have the belief about yourself that you are a healthy person who consistently makes healthy food and physical activity choices? So that's it for the class here. I'll stick around to answer any questions that people have, and thank you all for your participation. I know that the chat box is a little bit different for some people, but it sure makes it a lot more fun for me and hopefully for you too.
Kyle, thanks. That was awesome. Great information. Appreciate your time and your expertise.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, Lisa. Kyle, that was fabulous. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask Kyle while he's still on the phone?
I can speak to Melissa's question a little bit. So this would be outside of the Strong program. But if you were interested in lifestyle medicine, we're physically located over in the South Meridian YMCA, and I've got classes like this that are starting approximately every month. So I've got that 4-week series, and we'd like to open them up to the public in the future. So you could check in with us, Melissa, over at Lifestyle Medicine if you wanted to do the full 4-week series. Deanna, can we have more education? I'm not quite sure how to answer that one. If you could be more specific about the education that you're seeking, I could try to help you. Oh, I was just calling the Strong program what we're doing right now, Melissa. Mackenzie, we are not set up currently to offer the mindset classes virtually, though we are talking about doing that in the future. Natalie, what is one thing we can do to get started with this? An actionable step. Natalie, what I would recommend doing is maybe writing down the thoughts that are going through your mind in different situations, where you're having different thoughts that affect your health behavior decisions. So like when you walk by the break room again, literally what's going through your mind. Write it down and see if you can come up with something like you would talk to yourself in the future. So, you could use that slide I had previously, like, in this situation, this is what I would want to say to myself in the future. There are other resources out there, that teach more of the cognitive behavioral therapy model in relationship to health behavior change or weight management. One particular book would be me. I'm looking at my bookshelf right now. I'm trying to see where it is. Oh yeah, Judy Beck has a book called the Diet Trap Solution, and she teaches CBT skills in a self-help book. So that's the same kind of stuff that I'm talking about in a self-help book setting. And I've got these resources put together in another place too. I could send that over to Mackenzie, and she could send out to people that were in the class today. So yeah, I can plan on doing that. So you all have different resources that you can look into. All right. Any other questions? I'll make sure to get Mackenzie that resource list.
Perfect. It doesn't look like we have any other questions. So thank you so much, Kyle, for your time and energy. I think everyone learned a ton from your presentation today.
Yeah, we tried to pack it in 30 minutes. It's hard to do, but hopefully your head's spinning and you've got some ideas about things you could do differently.
Most definitely. Thank you. And thanks everyone for attending today. We will be sending out our recording in next week's e-tip. And then Kyle, will you send us a slide deck as well?
Yeah, I'll do
Perfect.
that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.